We are live. Let's see.
Anybody here?
Anybody here? Yeah, we see somebody here. Um,
This is 9:30 p.m.
4 people here. Let us know. Give us some feedback. Let us know if you can hear us okay. Just use a new mic. Hopefully, you guys can hear us. Hi. Can you hear us? Clear. Wonderful. Hey,
That's
Owen.
good. Because it was technical difficulties the last time.
I know. How's everybody doing? Again, I really love to see where you guys from. Tell us your location. It's always fun to say hello to people from different places. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. And sorry, we normally have the live stream on Fridays. However, last week because our little child had a year-end celebration, so we had to skip last week. So we moved to this week, but we'll keep our Friday spot as well. So we want to make sure we stay on schedule every week to see you guys and provide some advice and also just chatting. All right. So
Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Seems like everybody, California to New Jersey, coast to coast. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, remember we have a topic each week, and Ryan and I decided let's talk about a topic about purchasing a used truck. It's we receive a lot of inquiries over the years from our friends from YouTube and from other social media platforms, and some people struggle. I think we can provide some advice, at least from our standpoint. It's not really that's not a Bible, but we can definitely provide some advice from Ryan's standpoint and being a mechanic and also somebody purchased used truck before. And then after that, Ryan gonna answer some questions from you guys. Feel free to prepare your questions. It relates to this topic. But we will have chances to answer other questions in the future topics. All right, time for Ryan.
All right. So I guess our intro topic today is what to know when you're looking to purchase a used truck, especially if it's your first truck, because you don't want to start off on a new business and have something that is falling apart or leaves you stranded somewhere. And like I said, especially if you're kind of starting on a shoestring or something like that, you want something that's going to get you through. We've offered pre-purchase inspections. I've looked at a lot of trucks from here all the way. I think the farthest I went, San Antonio, Texas. I looked at a couple of trucks down there for a lady, and like I said, all over the country basically. So I like if you're not very mechanically inclined, I highly recommend. I mean, especially if you're making a $50,000 investment on a used truck, we highly recommend having somebody with a computer, especially on the newer, later model stuff that can get in, take a look at everything, and basically just do a good, thorough inspection on the truck just to make sure you're not walking. I mean, if you don't know yourself that you're not walking into a disaster, where we've had customers that have bought trucks and they start having emissions problems, et cetera, whatever. The first week they got the truck on the road, and next thing you know, they're into on some of the Freightliners. They're like, oh, you need a one box. I mean, you could be in 16, 20K. I mean, we've had some people that have come to us, and we've got them out the door for the 5,000 range or under. But that's still, if you're not expecting it, that's a big chunk of money. So first of all, I'd recommend having somebody check something out, or even just having a second set of eyes on something, because a lot of times even I miss stuff that somebody else might see, or somebody else don't see something, we might see it. So just even having a second set of eyes is a good plus. What I would recommend. So then from there, fleet trucks. I'm not a big fan of fleet trucks. A lot of the fleets out there, their service intervals are crazy. Like we're talking like 78,000 miles on an oil change. I don't. Me personally, I don't care what kind of synthetic oil, whatever you're running. These engines, they're clean on the outside, but they're, especially your post your EGR, all that stuff. They're pretty dirty engines on the inside, so that's where you get all that soot and everything else. So I recommend is using a cheaper oil and changing a little more often. So Yeah, so like I said, a lot of the fleets they kind of do the minimum. They like I've seen a lot of them. I mean, some like rider trucks out there I haven't looked at a lot of them, a couple different sites, and they'll change. They'll do a brake shoe on one side of the truck on the axle, and they won't do the other side. I go, well, I mean, pretty much everybody I know. I mean, standard practice for me is like if we're gonna do brakes on one, we do the whole axle. So that it's just this kind of the minimum, and that's that corporate structure to where it's a bigger machine, I guess, that they don't think about things in the same way as a single truck owner operator would. So or look out the same way. Um, and one thing I always hear, I've had people call me, "Oh, I just bought this truck. I had a fresh DOT. This thing should be good to go." Just because something has a DOT, that those are the minimum safety requirements for that truck to be on the road. That doesn't mean it's ready to go for 500,000 miles. So just because it has a fresh DOT, like I said again, does not mean that that truck is perfect. And no, that's the minimum safety requirements for that truck to be on the road. So I had a comment there. Engine hours are key. DCR, yeah, DCR trucking. That definitely that's so. That's one of the things that we preach upon too. Like I said, you're getting up to find so you're looking at something with 25,000, 30,000 hours on it, and it hasn't been overhauled in frame or whatever. You're probably gonna might want to put some money away for a or be planning on an overhaul, sometime in the near future. And that's his maintenance. You don't want to keep if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing something past what it's designed to do, basically, or you're gonna get into more money if if you spin a bearing or crack ring, on and on and on. So I mean, so that's just something to look at. I mean, if you can find a truck with an APU that's had an APU on its whole life, it's probably going to have 30% or more less hours on it than a truck that doesn't have an APU or hasn't had an APU on it its whole life. So, and the idle time is the worst thing with a lot of these with emission systems and all that because they don't get hot enough to burn everything out. They put up a lot of soot, so more regens and all that. Which kind of brings us into the pre-emissions, post-emissions truck. And by that, we're kind of like at the 2010 or, actually 2008, I guess we should say, because that's when the DPFs and, I mean, we have some trucks that come in with the Cummins, the CM870 ones, and they do have a DPF, a DOC and a DPF, but they don't have an SCR, so a little less issues with those. Then I guess prior to like that 2007 and a half, 8, most of the trucks out there don't have any of that stuff on them other than EGR cooler and EGR valve and EGR cooler, which there's issues with those, but just not as many. So my stance on those, the older trucks, I mean, you kind of look at, there's a lot of extra maintenance and issues with a post 2008 truck with all your emission stuff on it. But the thing, you get a lot better fuel economy with those engines, those newer model engines, the way they're set up versus, like older Cat C15s. I mean, I've got guys that I don't think they're getting 4.5 mile to the gallon. And those of you that have been out here, fuel is your biggest expense out there. So if you're going from 7.5, 8 mile a gallon to 4.5 to 5 mile a gallon, over a year where you're spending, $60,000, $70,000 on fuel, if you could cut 40% of that off, it could more than outweigh the problems of emission paying for maintenance, cleaning your DPFs and issues with your emission system. If you factor that in, so I mean, I'm more of an emissions, DPF SCR type of guy. That's what I would use later. I mean, this older stuff, I mean, we're getting back pretty far now. You're going back 15 years almost now. So I mean, it's like, do you want to drive a truck? I mean, unless you have one that's like been restored, really, really taken care of. I mean, do you really want to drive something that's 15 years old where you don't have the newer comforts, the later comforts that you do in a lot of the later model trucks? So what kind of comments we got here?
This one.
Okay, what are some good trucks for someone new to the industry? Freightliners, there's a couple different routes you could go. I mean, Freightliners with the Detroits, they are cheap. Parts are cheap. They're pretty cheap to maintain. The one box issue, I mean, so if you're looking at Detroit and you have if the truck has a one box, I would, especially if it's got 500,000 plus on it, I would really highly recommend you have somebody come out that has software to hook up to it. And if they can do a regen and look at the SCR NOx conversion efficiency and all that stuff where you're doing a regen, I would highly recommend that because, like I said, we've had a lot of people that come to us. They buy these trucks, and the first week, they're in. Like even coming to us, I mean, if we rebuilt, I mean, we've had a really good success rate. I mean, probably 90% plus with the one boxes we've done here with cleaning them, putting them all back together, putting new bungs in, filters, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, and our average ticket is anywhere from like 2,500 to 5,500 roughly. But I mean, if you're going to a dealer, their solution is always put a brand new one box in. And I've heard guys getting quoted as high as like 22,000 to do that. So it's almost like it's just as bad as an in frame. So that's one thing. If you're going to buy a Freightliner with a lot of miles, definitely I'd get somebody in there with some type of software to look at all the numbers and everything and take a look at everything on your on that one box and the emissions. So I'm a big, as you guys probably know, the people that have followed us for a while, I'm a big fan. Kenworth, I always like Kenworth. So they're easy, especially like T660s, T680s. I had a T680 once. They're easier to work on, I think. This I mean, like I said, going back, I don't know, I haven't worked on any of the T680 next gens or whatever yet. But I know the older T680s, T660s, W900s, they're pretty operator friendly, I guess. Peterbilt's pretty much the same. I mean, as far as what we're a little bit more expensive on parts and stuff like that. But they're both pack cars, so it seems like more and more they've been integrating the lines into kind of the same chat, like GM does with like Cadillac and GMC and Chevy and all that. So it's kind of the same thing. So what else we got? Max engine hours when so max engine hours, I probably wouldn't. I don't think I would buy anything over 25,000 unless it's had an overhaul. I would prefer. I mean, if you're new and you're on a budget, I would try to find something probably down in the 15,000 hour range. But definitely, I would not. I would not go over 25,000, and like I said, unless it had a documented overhaul in frame. So. What's that? It's called temp. I don't know exactly what that is. So it's Series 60 overhaul kits that had a major price increase. Yeah, I mean everything's went up like crazy. I mean, we just priced for an international. Actually, for my dad, a DT 530i, which isn't even pretty simple. I mean, it kind of evolved from the DT 466 line. And we priced one. We get pretty good pricing now through international over in Pittsburgh, and that was like almost 4,700 for an in-frame kit for a DT 530i. So, but yeah, the kits and stuff, everything's gotten pretty high. So yeah. What's the newest model truck that you can get for 20K?
International?
Um,
No.
yeah, that one guy had that that International Eagle. I think he paid like 15,000 for it, but it needs quite a bit of work. I mean, as far as an older Cummins that had needs a front gear housing cover, a rear structure gasket, and all that. So I mean, it's like 10 grand of work to do all that. So I mean, you can find stuff under $20,000. I mean, but you're probably going to be back in the early aughts. What I mean, like 2000 to like 2007, 2008. Sometimes you can get the older internationals pretty reasonable, but a lot of times there's a reason that those trucks are that price because they need $10,000 or $20,000 of work to actually, to where I would feel comfortable running from here across the country. So. The Detroit 60 series, yeah, they are a pretty good engine, pretty solid. Parts are have been pretty reasonable. I know our parts for 60 series are pretty reasonable. So you can get pretty decent power out of them. They're halfway fuel efficient. I mean, not to where the new stuff is, but I mean, you can see 6s and possibly 7 MPG, I would think. So. I'm gonna take one part of this for tank. What truck and engine would you prefer for tank hauling? I've never done tanker myself,
Or
but my
which one?
my my stance on horsepower and and powertrain basically. I did drive as a lot of those of you that might have followed us in the last couple years. I did drive van, Landstar, and did Snyder and Mercer as well. But I've always done dry van, never did flatbed or tank or anything like that or bulk. I think if you're running cross country over the Rockies and down in the Appalachians, in West Virginia and all that side of the country, I recommend 500 horsepower engine, 13 speed manual, and like a 336 or 342 rear ends. And I know when I had my T680, I actually had an MX13 in it with a 455 multi torque, 13 speed manual, 336 rears, and I drive exceptionally fast, I guess you could say. I like to when the sign says 80 mile an hour, I'm running 80 mile an hour. And with that truck, I was averaging at those, at running the speeds that I ran, like about 7.5 MPG, and even with the 455, had plenty of power. Seemed like with my T660 with the PDI, I think was running a little over 500 if you do the calculation, and it had a 10 speed in it. But it performed pretty well. But yeah, I mean, my ideal powertrain, like I said, dry van, tanker would probably be fine too. I mean, anything under 80,000 gross, I think you're pretty straight with 500 HP and 13 speed. And like I said, 336s or 342s are pretty good middle of the road gearing. To where you're still gonna get decent economy and still gonna be able to pull the grades and everything pretty well. So like if you're going like 355s and stuff like that, you're gonna lose a lot of fuel economy versus the lower gears, or the lower ratios. So what we got next? So I think we actually two of our other bullets up there. I think we just covered the horsepower and transmission type. Yeah, and I guess the last thing, with the after treatment systems, again, that's where a lot of people go out. The one thing I think there's this I think we've touched on this before.
Mhm.
I think there's a pretty big lack of education, I think, in the industry, all the way from what the manufacturers have put out down to the dealers, down to fleets and companies out there, and even owner operators. This stuff on these needs to be maintained. I mean, if you're cleaning your DPFs, a lot of manufacturers recommend like 250,000 miles. On the first time, you may be fine. If you had a brand new truck, ran it 250,000 miles, clean the filters, you may be fine with that. Afterwards, what we recommend, and I think what some other other people in the industry that we've talked to, even some of our distributors recommends like once a year or 150,000 miles, you should be cleaning your DPF. So that it's this maintenance, and like I said, I don't think the from the top down that stuff has been put out. It's like, oh, you just run this thing, and that's what the fleets do. They'll run them the 600,000 miles, and then they turn loose and sell them to you guys, and then you're stuck with the problems from day one because that system hasn't been maintained the way it should have. And a lot of it's just you know sensors and wiring. I mean, we've seen a lot of issues with I have a we had a customer with basically intermittent issues where saying, oh, his filter's full one day, then it's not the next, like momentarily. Well, a filter don't just go from full to empty unless there's a short in the wiring harness, a sensor. This is not possible. So yeah, and a lot of the dealers and stuff out there and other shops that don't really specialize in stuff, they'll just throw a new filter on it. But you have to get to the root of the problem, or you're just going to continue to throw money in something and have the same problem over and over. So, or it never goes away. So, um, can a plugged up EGR core cause turbo lag? Yeah, I mean, if you're obviously that's going to be a restriction in your exhaust system. So, I mean, that EGR cooler is another thing that people are just saying, oh, we replace it when it breaks. And again, that's something over time when you get buildup of soot on those little tubes through the EGR cooler, it becomes like an insulator. So it's not efficiently cooling that exhaust gas. So you're going to lose fuel economy and power. So as what science is that with you can compress colder air. You can pack more in than you can hot air because it's more dense, colder air. Warmer airs. So the colder you can keep that air going into your engine through that EGR core, the more efficiently, the more power and fuel economy. And we've changed EGR cores for people, and they've seen half a mile increase in fuel economy. So put a new EGR core on, like on a Cummins ISX or something, or even Cummins ISXs. We're in about 2,700 for EGR kit and labor to put it on. And we've done a couple of Detroit DD15s, and they're a little bit cheaper, but there's a couple of them that are on back order, national back order right now. But I would recommend. The other problem with EGR cores is that if you have an emission system, a DOC, an SCR, if that EGR core actually goes and you've got coolant going through those catalysts, it can actually poison or ruin those catalysts. Where okay, now you had this EGR core go, and now you've ruined everything else too. So I think it's better to be proactive about that stuff and replace it earlier. And then, it basically pay for itself and fuel economy gained back. And then you don't take that risk of blowing EGR core and ruining your DOC and SCR. So.
But I just for give you guys perspective on the pricing of a DOC and SCR. I recently priced one with I think that's international. So the DOC, a lot of international DOCs are on critical order, meaning that they don't have it until you order, and they don't give you a lead time on it. So the price for them, like I've seen $6,000 to $8,000 for a DOC and an SCR individually. So each, those can get very, very expensive, and it's hard to source DOCs because those are not items like DPFs and consumables. Not consumable. It's like you're supposed to change it like filters. But DOC and SCR, they don't expect you to break. So that's why most dealers don't stock them. If you wanted to find a DOC, if that's really poison, it's bad, you're going to have a hard time to get them quickly. So you'll be down for a few days.
And they're a lot more than the filters. Some of the DOCs can be twice what a filter is. So, so that's why I said, like I said, if you're getting up to 500K, if you got the, I would probably replace it. There's some machines out there that we've been looking at that actually can clean the EGR coolers on the truck. It's got like unhook each end of it, and it's got a solution that it pumps through it wide that you actually start the truck up and run it while it's throwing it to heat it up and everything. So that's something else we've been kind of looking at, but I don't know if I want to make the investment yet. So old school cabovers. Yeah, I always thought cabovers are pretty cool. The one thing nice about those is that the whole cab tips up and you can really get to the engine and everything pretty easily. But they're kind of far and few between. I know Edelman's truck salvage, truck sales, they're about 5 minutes down the road from us here in Canton. And they've had, I see them down at Old Internationals and stuff like that down there every once in a while. But again, a lot of those trucks, they're getting so far back in age. Be like I said, get a good look at them or have somebody else look and see what you're getting into. Because like I said, you could get nothing's cheap anymore. I remember back when I was in Votech in high school, me and one of my second cousins, we rebuilt an older DT 466 for a local farmer, and like the kit was like $1,000, and then obviously at the school we did stuff. You could bring stuff there, and we did it for free for training, but you kind of took the risk of 16-year-old kids rebuilding their engine. But yeah, I remember when stuff like that, a rebuild kit for 466 was $1,000. Now they're several thousand. So
well, the thing is, just for you guys' information, in China, I'm from China, so all I see is those cab-over trucks there. And Europe as well. I think I went to Germany. All of those are cab-overs. I don't really see American styles.
Well, the reason they were popular here was because there used to be length restrictions on your overall length, and once a lot of states did away with that, then that's when they went back to the hood over the engine design again. Once they did away with those length restrictions, so that's why they were popular back in the 70s and 80s and so on. So
all right, I'm gonna take a question from Jesus, or don't know if I read your
That's
name
not really a
right.
question.
Yeah, but I love this. But I just want to put out there. That's a question for me. I take it. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Right, that's okay.
This one. All right. Yeah.
Okay, so we're asking about a clinic for soon-to-be owner operators. That's something we've been considering, but we're just extremely busy with everything here. Um, so I don't know, those of you that know our building, we have like a big showroom on the second floor, which would be pretty nice, like a classroom or a convention type space, or not like a huge convention, but nice for like a seminar, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And that is something that we were looking to put together. I mean, even if you've already bought a truck, you could bring it in. So I don't know if you guys have any feedback or what you guys would think of something like that. But yeah, if that's kind of what we're looking. If you're looking to buy a truck, we may have like a day or 2 day class or something. And then even if you've already bought a truck, we can kind of go bring it in. We'll kind of go through it, and then even talk about some trucking business type of stuff. But it's something that's on the list. Short story long. So,
Hopefully soon.
where's the shop? We are in Canton, Ohio, basically right at the corner of I-77 and US 30. So if you're driving down south on I-77, right before you get to crossover US 30, if you look off to the left, if you're going south, you can see the top of our building from the highway. So.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much went over all
I
the
have
lists there.
one question. I think you skip from or this one. Yeah, that one. I want to know if you have some. We don't want to skip anything. It's on the screen right there.
Temp drops on 24. Cascadia. I mean, that could be a temp sensor issue. I don't know. That temperature seems kind of low, so I don't really. Would kind of need a little bit more info on that one, unfortunately. So what else we got?
Here, put on the screen. Another question: the heavy duty scan tool, the best generic scan tool.
I don't know. I mean, the Bosch is a handy unit. The
They
HDS
don't have it anymore.
They have an HDS 250 now, I believe. It
do?
replaced the 200.
Okay.
So I mean, they'll do basic fault code rating on a lot of the engines out there. But like I said, as far as the aftermarket or kind of no name stuff, I haven't really had a lot of success with it. Um, I've kind of went to like the OEM stuff, like Cummins Insight, and Detroit Diagnostic Link. I mean, we use we've dropped most of our licenses and went to the Snap-on Ultra ProLink Ultra, and actually Snap-on owns, what's the name of that company? Not Diagnostic Link, but Next IQ. Snap-on owns a lot of companies out there that people probably never even knew they did own, but they own Next IQ, and they actually write the software for Detroit Diagnostic Link and a lot of other OEMs out there. So it's basically for a one time, and we paid a lot of money for the unit, but there's no license fee after that. So it was like 13 grand for for everything that we have, which covers, Bendix, Labco, PACCAR, Cummins, Detroit, and even has light, medium duty for like your Fords, GMCs, Chevys, and etc. And like I said, we was spending $6,000 to $7,000 a year on just licenses when we had Jaw Test, Diagnostic Link, Cummins, Insight. So licenses get really expensive, and then we just charge a $50 fee whenever we hook up to something to try to pay, because when you come in the shop, you're paying for my time, and then we got to pay for the machine because that's you got to pay for that. So
I'm gonna take this question. All right. Well, it helps, yes. However, I want to let you guys know, even though I'm a mechanical engineer, being a mechanical engineer in this field for past 11, 12 years, I still think he knows more than I do. A lot more. Calculation wise, a lot of engineers now, we're just stay in the office I think Ryan and I had got into a topic about engineers really don't engineer good stuff. I as an engineer, I try to be, whatever manufacturing company I work for, I try to be in the shop involved a lot. But most engineers,
Are not mechanically inclined anymore.
exactly.
So
I know how to put it together on the drawing. I might not know how to put it together in real life.
and I don't know. I've told this to a few people, but I know back, coming from the farm background, John Deere, they used to years ago when they designed something, the engineers after they put it together, they would actually make the engineers go out in the shop and do all the service procedures. So that's why back pre 1990s, all their equipment was really simple and really easy to work on because they actually made the people that designed it go out there and take this apart and they say, well, this is they don't want to if they didn't want to do it, they had to redesign it to where it was a lot simpler, which we don't have that anymore. I mean, I've worked with some companies I've worked at. I've worked hand in hand with engineers on machines and stuff, and it's like a lot of them have no idea how stuff goes together, comes apart, or anything. And a lot of it's
That's
just
me.
taking older designs that mechanically inclined people designed 50, 100 years ago, and just keep on adding and adding and adding little bits and little bits and building off of basically somebody else's work.
But
So,
I want to say, hey, a lot of stuff is here. He knows what I do. Yeah.
what's that CDL school? So
Well, I
there's
have.
a CDL school in New York. Actually, like if you're going to be owner operator, some like over here in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, it's probably I mean for getting into the getting out of the house and getting back in the house when you're going on the road, is probably one of the best areas to be in the country, in my opinion. I mean, there's always good freight. There's short freight. There's long freight, and it usually pays pretty decent going both directions. So, I mean, if you're wanting to make a good go at it, I would recommend being in the Midwest. And cost of living is a lot cheaper than in New York or California or something as well. So.
Tires go with, or more costly tires worth the price?
Tires. I don't recommend retreads. I've never ran retreads, so for what you can buy virgin rubber, I'd probably just go with the virgins in my opinion. So I've always ran bridge. I like Bridgestones for the price. I mean, Michelin's are kind of the top of the line, but I think for $100 less a tire, I'd go with the Bridgestone. I mean, on drives, Bridgestones. I've had some. I've got 250, 300,000 miles out of them. So, and the steers. I mean, steers are what they are. I mean, I'm kind of retentive when it comes to like. I usually change my steers at 8/32. So I'm not going to run them down the floor. And because if you lose a steer tire, if I see any type of tread separation or anything, I'm changing them out. So I mean, usually with a set of Bridgestone R284s, I mean, I was seeing 125, 130,000, just depending on if you ever if any damage or anything along the ways. But other part of that tires is replacing your shocks. I mean, I see a lot of trucks. I've seen trucks come in here with 600 to 700,000 miles, and they've got the original shocks on them. I mean, oil charged shocks, they don't last 700,000 miles, unfortunately. I mean, even the manufacturers will tell you they 50 to 100,000. I mean, I just made it a habit to change mine out once a year, and you'll save your money in tires. So.
Chinese accent? Is he from China?
So,
I don't know. This one is our like a can. What is that? Like a boot camp. The thing that we want to do.
yeah. Purchasing a truck through an auction. A lot of times auctions are kind of funny about letting you look at stuff and driving it. I know a lot of people that have bought stuff at auctions and they won't let you drive it on the road. You can go in and start it and look around it, and that's it. So it can be kind of risky. So if you are looking to buy something from an auction, I'd be careful and have a budget to do some repairs. And I recommend for anybody going into the business, if you're gonna be out there, I'd have at least $10,000 saved up, either in the bank or have a line of credit or a credit card or something. Because if you're down to like your last $200 or something trying to get repairs, I mean it's not a good thing because nothing's cheap in this field. So like I said, I'd highly recommend anybody. I mean, whatever you're buying, have at least 10 grand and some type of capital that you can get a hold of for any major repairs. And even a set of tires, drive tires these days. I mean, you could easily get around 4 grand for those. So it's an expensive business. So.
What do you think about Kingworth 900, 1999?
I imagine that's probably 3406E, I would assume, in that truck. I like the W900s. I like the W9s and the T660s. T660s get a little bit better mileage, but I like that. I've always liked that narrow cab, but their W9s are a good truck. They're easy to work on, um, and especially if you got that 86 Studio Sleeper, they're really nice as well. A lot more comfortable if you're going to be out there on the road for a few weeks at a time. So.
What about Missouri? Do you know?
Missouri's not too bad. That was going back to where to move out of CDL school.
Yeah.
Yeah, out of St. Louis area. I mean, you're not too far from Chicago. Down there, kind of on that, coming into Tennessee, Arkansas. There's decent freight down there as well. So that's not a terrible area.
Yeah. I think we covered most of questions.
Okay, let's grab that one. That right there.
This one?
No, down.
This one?
Yeah.
Auction. This one? From DL.
Buy your truck from the dealer or to buy an auction. I mean, I think a lot of dealers they're going to let you bring somebody out. You mean obviously most dealers are going to let you drive the truck, and you probably bring somebody in to look at it. But I mean, it's people. A lot of these places, dealers, auctions, even personal individuals. I mean, there's a lot of dishonest people out there that know it's on its last leg or whatever, and they're going to get rid of it. And a lot of times, I mean, I buy a lot of equipment like for the shop and farm equipment in the past. There's a place called Chalker's Auction up here in Southington, Ohio, and honestly, every piece of used equipment I think I've got screwed on up there that I've bought. Every single thing I've bought used. I even bought a pallet jack up there for $100 that was used. Brought it home and it's missing the front. Like I bought it online. I bid on lines because I don't like going and standing around for 6 hours at an auction to buy one thing, and then if you don't get what the one thing you wanted, it's like you just wasted half a day. But so I bid on stuff online without really looking at it close up, which I don't recommend, especially if you're going to buy something that's 20, 40, $50,000 or whatever. But yeah, I literally bought a pallet jack, went up there and got it, brought it back, and the front wheels and mechanism, everything was missing. So we ended up taking it right back up there and selling it again on the next sale. So yeah, most used stuff I bought on sales, I've gotten screwed usually, especially when I didn't look at them first. So. But like again, dealers can be kind of shady too, and they're obviously with a dealer, they have overhead, so you're going to pay more for stuff at a dealer. But again, going back to the auction thing. I mean, even a lot of the farm equipment dealers I've dealt with in the past, going back to Chalkers, they a lot of the dealers say, yeah, we take our junk up there to get rid of it because we don't want to sell it to any of our local customers. So a lot of times there's a reason that a truck is at an auction because nobody wants to be the bad guy. So it's like if I got a piece of junk I don't want to fix, and I don't want to be the guy selling it to you where you're coming back hating me or hating the dealership, so you take it to an auction, then nobody ever knows whose it was. So you just got a middleman that has nothing to do with it anyways. So I would be careful with auctions. I mean, I would really get a good look at it. Don't buy it just online without looking at pictures online because they take pictures. These people are experts. They know what to take pictures of and what not to take pictures of.
Do you want to grab one more question and end the live stream today?
Yeah, we're approaching 45 minutes here.
Yeah. Here. What about this one? The fuel pump. What is it? Where is it? It went away.
Yeah, that International Pro Star N13. Yeah, I would definitely not recommend that engine. They just, yeah, those guys that know me, I'm not a big fan of Internationals. They're different. Their engines are shoved half underneath the cab, probably worse than any of them. And they are they're a pain to work on. And even if you have a Max Force engine or an N13 or 826 or whatever they're calling it these days, there's no way to change. Like you can't like if you buy an old Max Force or something, you can't put a Cummins in it without major wiring. It's everything's different. So I would you don't see a lot of the Max Force 13s out there. I don't see a lot of them on the road anymore, but I would recommend staying just because they're only $10,000 or something. I mean, like pulling containers locally, you might be all right. I know there's a lot of people deleting them and stuff like that, but you know our stance on that. So I think most people do.
5 minutes. Okay. So we have some. What about? Would you recommend a company from? Sorry.
Recommend. As most of you probably know, I'll say where the question was, where you'd recommend coming to start. I did Snyder, Icy Choice. I did then went to Landstar. Then I got out of it for a little while. Then I decided I'd try Mercer, so I went over to them, and then I didn't like that, as a lot of you probably know, and went back to Landstar. I like Landstar a lot because it's probably the closest you'll get to being a independent, or like your own authority without all the fixed cost and hassles of dealing with all that stuff. And there's a lot of discounts. But like I said, with Landstar, you're pretty much you call agents, brokers, you do everything on your own terms. And they're pretty. They don't bother you. I mean, like I said, I'd run like 80 miles an hour everywhere, and nobody ever called me. Nobody bothered me unless you got a speeding ticket or something. Which isn't saying that's a good thing, but I just like the fact that like Jacksonville, I might talk to them twice a year, and it would usually be about a pay issue or something to do with a load or something. But nobody really bothered me. I did my own thing. They were pretty lenient on trailers. I know there was when we went to Asia that one year, we went to Hong Kong and Taiwan and stuff, and back to China. And I mean, I had the trailer sitting at home for like 3 weeks, and nobody ever called me or really cared. I guess I don't know. They probably might not like to hear that. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty flexible, but the main and your fixed costs are really cheap. I think when after my truck and everything was paid for, with my first guard insurance, the operator or contractor protection, which is like your workman's comp program and all that. I mean, I was down to like $90 a week or something in fixed costs, so it's really affordable. And it's if you want to take 2 weeks off, it don't cost you. Like if you got your own authority and you got a trailer payment and insurance and all that, where you got $2,000, $2,500 a month in fixed expenses, excluding a truck payment, it makes it a little bit more difficult to take time off because you got to cover those fixed expenses.
I think we're missing a question from Omar, reminding us to answer this question. Getting a used truck from Snyder.
Snyder, when I was a company driver for Snyder, and their service interval, I believe, was like 78,000 miles. So if you're looking at a truck that has 500,000 miles on it, that was a company truck from them, it's probably had the oil change 6 or 7 times. And the same thing with the emissions. I mean, these companies, they know want to get rid of these trucks. Now, the older, like the SFI trucks that they're selling that were owner operator trucks, a lot of those guys seem like they take a little bit better care, and those are spec'd out a little bit better than what the company driver trucks are. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, you really got to check those trucks out, and you got to kind of keep in mind that they did the bare minimum to get that truck through to 500-600 whenever they're selling them, and then they're going to turn loose some for a reason because they know when the major problems start. So.
Yeah, let's grab last question. I don't know. The disc brakes and drum brakes. I think that's your warehouse,
I don't have a lot of it. We just did our first disc brakes. We don't see a whole lot of them here, and a lot of them that need replacement. They are really easy to put pads in. I mean, after you take the wheel off, I can basically put a set of pads in them in a couple minutes. I mean, there's just I'll have to do a video on the next time one comes in. We'll have to show. I think we actually did part of the video, but then it turned into a big mess. We had to have the truck done, so we didn't get to finish it the last time. But you can service those in like literally like 10 minutes. You can put new brakes on, new pads. So they're not too bad, but you get with rotors and stuff can get pretty pricey. And a lot of times it's easier. They sell they sell a whole hub assembly that has the rotor seal and new bearings and spindle sleeve tube and all that. So but they're like a grand, $1,200 for a whole hub where you can just switch the whole thing out. So it's a little bit easier than just putting the rotors on or something. So, but I think you probably do. I mean, that's why the rest of the automotive industries went to disc brakes, because you have a little bit more better stopping power and controlling and all that. So, but it seems like the drums are still pretty dominant out there, and that's what we see.
Let's grab this question and end our live stream. Last question, guys. 52 people. Hopefully, you guys are not too bored.
So recently quit trucking due to health after getting a company. 84. Yeah, definitely. Trucking's not a very good lifestyle. You know, like for me, I knew switching from days to nights and all that, and you don't eat very well and eat garbage. So yeah, and you're sitting all day for one, so or for 11 hours at a time. But yeah, being an agent, Landstar is kind of funny from what I hear with being an agent. They do want you to have a couple years of experience with actually like with a brokerage or kind of in some type of dispatching capacity. But yeah, I mean, I love the line. Like 95% of the agents I dealt with when I was a BCO, uh, you know, had good experiences. I mean, they're nice people. They're independent, just like you. And they kind of did their own thing. A lot of them were kind of, you know, did it out of their house, just like an owner operator basically. But you know, booking load, you know, finding brokering loads. So yeah.
Fuel
So.
pump. All right. So Samuel remind us not answering the question about fuel pump. Let me go back to
This
search
has to
that.
probably be the last one here. So.
Yeah, I know, but we want to make sure we cover. Don't want anybody be disappointed.
2015 Freightliner with an IS 615, 620K. People are saying, is there any reason why? I mean, is there any performance issues? I mean, really, you could do a high pressure fuel test and, you know, run it up and see if it's putting out the pressure that it's supposed to, because it's all pressure based. So, I mean, a lot of these engines then go up, you know, close to 35,000 PSI when you do a pressure test, which scares me to death when I'm doing it. Because that's about enough, you know, definitely could cut you in half. But I unless there's like a performance issue or something, I mean, the first step would be doing a high pressure fuel test and make sure that pump's putting out what it's supposed to be putting out. Is what I would recommend. I wouldn't just blindly replace it. And a lot of times there is a pressure sensor up on the fuel rail too. That's, you know, $150 or something like that. So if it's like I said, I don't know exactly what all you got going on, because it's kind of vague here. But like I said, I wouldn't just blindly replace the pump because somebody's, oh, it's got 600K on it, you need to replace it. You know, I've seen them with 900K with the original pumps. So, now a 2015 would not have, that would be a CM2350 fuel system. So that wasn't the one that was the problem child. It was the CM2250s back from 2010 to the 2012 engine model years that had the ceramic plunger cups and all that would go bad. So, but you typically don't see those issues on the 2350s.
Okay. We're down here, guys, and hopefully it was a good time spent with us in the past 45 to 50 minutes.
We'll be back on Friday. Is that the normal time? So.
Yeah, we'll be back on Friday. Hopefully, we'll see you guys on Friday and 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. Let's chat again. All right, stay safe, guys. We'll see you again. Bye.